All right, welcome everybody. So this is lesson 1.3 on classic checking skills. Now the reason it's classic is a lot of you may not do this anymore. A lot of you may think, well, that's old. I don't need to do that anymore. You do need to learn still the classic skills of an old school checking account. Matter of fact, how to write a check, how to look at a check register, how to keep balance of everything that you have to make sure that you're spending it properly. And this has a lot to do with future lessons that we're going to talk about, especially in relating to budgeting. Okay, so let's get started. So first thing we're going to do is, did you guys know that online banking is relatively new? In 1994, only 100,000 households were using online banking. Okay, so basically, I guess you could say that was what, 26 years ago, which I know may seem like a long time for a lot of you watching this, but ladies and gentlemen, to your parents, that was probably when they were your age, okay? Or maybe a little bit, either 26 years ago, most of your parents were probably a little younger. They were in junior high, maybe early high school, trying to get these habits, and their parents weren't online. They were using old school techniques. Okay, so online users by 2001 had been over 19 million US households. Okay, what aspects of managing your account were probably more difficult? Think about that and give me your response, please. And then how do you think people kept track of how much money was in their account on any given day? Ladies and gentlemen, before phones and technology, how did they do it? So give me your responses there, please, in complete and full sentences. All right, writing a check, pretty simple. Ladies and gentlemen, you click on this link, it takes you to themint.org, which is tips for teens. It's got some cool stuff in here. And so this is basically a writing a check. You buy a pair of jeans at the Mart for $34.95. It says enter the date, year, all that stuff. So what you use is use a keyboard, play around with it. You would type that in. And then, of course, after you get done typing this in, you would hit next. And then, ladies and gentlemen, it will tell you to go from here. Now, that's all I want you to do. Just play around a little bit and kind of see how you were supposed to write a check. And then go on and go forward. Have some fun with it if you want. All right, what's a check register? Why do I care? Well, ladies and gentlemen, a check register is huge. Okay, this is something that you need to make sure that you always keep track of. Back in the day, what would happen, ladies and gentlemen, is your parents usually would have to pay, either write a check or they would pay within cash. Okay, so if you had cash, that's completely different than this. All right, but a check register, most people would get what's called duplicates, which is a carbon copy. So you have a check, like what was on that previous example, and then behind it would be a duplicate. And what you would do is you put a piece of cardboard behind it and press hard. And as you press hard, what you wrote on top of the check would transcribe to the piece of carbon paper that was underneath. So you could help keep track of your expenses. And you would go home, and on a check register, you would write down what you spent for that day. And the main reason is because it usually took a while for checks to cash. I remember when I was younger, my grandparents would get so mad at me because they would write a check for my birthday, especially if I didn't live in state with them, and sometimes I wouldn't cash it right away. And so my parents or my grandparents would have on a check register, Jason Steiger, $50. And then they knew that was supposed to come out of the account. Yet they would go reconcile, and we'll talk about that in a bit, a month later, and I still wouldn't cash the check, okay? And so they would be off, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what does a check register do? What is it? Where do you get it? Why do you want one? How often do you update it? And then how do you complete one? And then we're going to talk about this in a little bit. And then now that you know all these things, are you likely to use one to manage your account? Why or why not? Okay, so I'd want you to look at a check register. What is it? Okay, how can you get one? And then go from there, all right? So print your own, create your own check register. There's a lot of ads in between, so apologize for that. Cool thing about check registers now is they are online. One of the big key things is that I've had to deal with you guys know my history. If you watch the intro video on Canvas about my history of personal work, when I did the finance stuff for businesses, ladies and gentlemen, my main goal was to reconcile a bank account using a bank statement, okay, using software, and that basically would track our expenses. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I would use that software and I would compare it with what the bank said we had. And the two had to be the same. Because if they weren't, then there was an error on my end or on the bank's end. Now, it's usually never on the bank's end, so they say, but every once in a while you would find one, okay? So what you guys need to know is understand what a check register is, all right? Now, this also has to do a lot with what I need to make sure you guys understand is this is personal, but it can be used for business. It's going to be a huge thing that for some of you in my class this year are going to want to start your own business. Why not? Ladies and gentlemen, this is America. The cool thing about it here is that you can start a business. And if you create something that somebody wants and will pay you to do, then ladies and gentlemen, that is a business idea that you can do. It could be something, it may not be your full-time job. If I have any artists in this class that want to sell their art on the side, you would want to create a business account related to that. If I have some cooks or some chefs in here that decide, you know what, I'm going to have, which I know I have one at least, when you start doing this stuff and you put the pieces together and you make an own business and you want to make meals for people and you want to have, and you want to get gratuity back for it or expenses back, you're going to want to keep track of those things. And so what you do, ladies and gentlemen, is you have a separate business and a personal checking account. So don't look at this and say, well, I'm never going to use a checking account. You will. And if you think to yourself, well, I'm not going to use a check register like that, you probably will for business purposes. Whether it be when you read this article, you'll figure out why, the other article before, why you would do it and how you're going to keep track of it. And there's also a lot of business implications to you making sure that you keep track of your money, because you're going to have to for tax purposes. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, it does get complicated. But you guys can do it if you're smart enough and you figure out and you work hard how to do it. And that's what I'm here for, is to help you out. All right, why balance your checking account? Well, ladies and gentlemen, simple adage, okay? List the steps. Steps are listed in here, okay? So you have on here the list steps. Whoops. You go back. Uh-oh. You may have clicked on an advertisement. Get out of it. All right, sweet. There are steps that are listed here. Keep track, okay? Money management, fraud, and those are the things you want to do, okay? So list the steps for balancing an account. It's in this article. List steps for reconciling your account. Historically, why is it important? Just read a couple of those things. In today's age of online banking, why would it still be useful to balance and reconcile your checking account? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has a lot to do with a budget, which is what we will talk about. Making sure you guys don't spend more than you earn. It's a very key thing. All right, so, and then what we're going to do is, ladies and gentlemen, there is going to be a project. All right, calculate, reconcile your checkbook. That's going to be on a different video. That's going to be a project worth 20 points. Please make sure you guys do it as we go on through this. This one will be more with Excel, which I think you guys should enjoy, because I want to get you, some of you guys, to navigate not just Word, but Excel, and to understand how you can use data tracking and stuff like that. So I'll have that in a separate video, but know that's what's expected of you. And then here's the question of the day. What percentage of Gen Z have a payment app on their phone? Well, what this actually comes to, ladies and gentlemen, is this data crunch. So this is actually on Canvas as well, all right? And what I want you guys to do is, let me minimize this part, is go in here onto the Canvas page, and you're gonna answer, look at this flow chart, okay? And you're gonna answer these 5 questions. This is 1, 2, it's supposed to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is hilarious. But this is actually already on Canvas. So I wanna make sure you guys understand that are the skills you learned in today's lesson, writing a check using one, still relevant in today's online and banking world? Give me yes or no. And if it's no, that's okay. But if you think yes, explain. If no, what would you do instead? Okay, that's what I want to make sure you guys understand. All right, and then what you need to do though is review the question of the day, then complete the 5 questions on the data crunch sheet. This data crunch sheet is in Canvas. Okay, so please make sure. Then you say, well, where is this crunch sheet at? It is in Canvas. So go find that in Canvas, and then you circle back around and finish it, okay? Finally consider it, all right? And then we have an exit ticket. So just to make sure you guys understand this, what I'll do is, I'm gonna exit this in a second here. Let me see if I can pull this out. So I'll make this smaller, and I'll make this larger so that we can see this data crunch. So make sure you guys do this. See if I can center it. All right, sweet. So what I wanna make sure you guys understand is trends in non-cash payments by number, okay? Non-prepaid debit cards, credit cards, ACH debit transfers, and then you have credit transfers, and then they have on here checks. Okay, you can see that checks from the year 2000, it was the most in billions, has slowly trickled down and is now about even. Now, checks are still used quite frequently in the business world. Okay, a lot of basic understandings is that what you guys need to understand is when you own a business, there are hidden fees on back ends of credit cards and even some debit cards. And so what people need to understand is that a lot of companies still will accept checks, especially business companies when you're buying large purchases. And when I say business, I mean like Fortune 500 companies, big boys, or even small family-owned businesses, even dental practices. Okay, when I did the finances for a dental practice, I paid everything with a check. The main reason for that is because I didn't want any additional fees. All right, so we had a small glitch in the video, but I want to continue to make sure I finish it off. All right, so when I stated in the last, what I got cut off was I didn't want any additional fees for us as a company, okay? So I have to pay the fees. I didn't want to, so I would do checks, which are not fee related. So please make sure that you guys do the data crunch and that you finish that off. And then, ladies and gentlemen, answer these two questions already, and then we'll work on the exit ticket. Go on here and tell me exactly your feelings on these things, okay? Which of the process of comparing your own records to the records provided for your own bank, and then list at least 3 pieces of information you must write when filling out a check, and then why should you keep your own check register rather than relying solely on your own online bank statement. And the reason for that would be, ladies and gentlemen, if you do write checks, sometimes there's a delay and the bank doesn't recognize that, but you know that there's money coming out. And that's one thing we'll talk about when we budget, okay, when we get into the budgeting lesson, that you guys are gonna, and I wanna teach you guys the process of understanding what the future holds. Like, for example, when you have a cell phone payment, you know every day, every month, you're gonna get a certain dollar amount pulled out of your checking account. So you'll need to keep a check register and future date it to make sure you have enough money in the bank, okay? It's all about making sure you guys are financially responsible, and that's the main thing, okay? So after this lesson, so make sure we got 2 things that you're gonna finish up on. All right, we have the checking reconciliation activity, it's worth 20 points. You have the exit ticket that you wanna fill out here, and then the quiz that's in Canvas. And also, ladies and gentlemen, there is this data crunch worksheet in Canvas as well. Okay, if you have any questions, please make sure you see me or come see me or find me whenever I am available. I'm usually available almost any time. But good luck, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you are continuing to enjoy this lesson.